and welcome to Program 2 of Flicks4Change 2021, aka Hawaiian Shirt Night. Hey! If you're just joining us for the first time this season, be sure to check out our festival introduction at the start of Program 1. The films in Program 2 cover issues on the climate crisis, environmentalism, animal rights, human rights, toxic masculinity, and mental health. As you may have seen last night, James wore his high school prom tuxedo. I can't wait to see what crazy outfit he comes up with on Hawaiian Shirt Night. Let's take a look.
So I want to remind everybody of our hashtag Be The Change campaign. One thing that I did not say on opening night is that it is open to everybody, to our filmmakers, our panelists, friends and family that you choose to share your film with or this program with. The whole idea is that we want what we're doing here as a community to have a ripple effect out in the world. So if you decide to take a next step and be the change, be the positive change that our world needs, go ahead and upload a picture, a video on Facebook or on Instagram with a brief description of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you will be eligible for the at least $1,000 prize that we will announce at the end of our festival. The campaign ends on April 24th, 1 month after our final night, and we're going to announce our hashtag Be The Change winner. So we want you to get out there and be the change that our world needs, and don't forget to mention the film, the filmmaker, or the panelists that inspired you to do it. With that said, tonight's program, the panelists after, we are very lucky, in my opinion, to have some great films on environmental issues, the climate crisis, and banning live animal wet markets here in the US. That's something that, as the festival director, I knew nothing about. And one of the cool things about my job is that I get to learn about the issues that are most pressing to our world. So we're lucky to have that filmmaker with us as well. So enjoy the show. Don't forget to comment as we watch along together. And don't forget to think about how you're going to be the change. Thanks so much.
Well, it looks like James didn't get the Hawaiian Shirt Night memo after all. Perhaps it's because I didn't send him one. I guess we'll never know. Speaking of memos, please look out for a few of our finalist films that, due to licensing, will only be up on our platform for 1 to 7 days. Last night, along with Program 1, we also posted the hilarious and touching film Oddbird, written and directed by Katie Dorr. Keep an eye out for those films. They're still eligible for our Judges' Choice Awards, also our Audience Choice votes, but getting quick as they won't be up for long. Without any further ado, strap yourselves in, because it's time for the films.
So The Fight to Ban Live Animal Markets is a film about how the vast majority of animals in our world are treated and the devastating health risks that it can have. And as we saw with the coronavirus, when it hit, all eyes were on China and the wet markets there. But what people didn't realize is that we have these same kinds of markets all over America, and many of them in the biggest city in the country. So we wanted to document the actual true conditions, and so the public could see for themselves.
Do you see any water troughs anywhere for them? I don't see any water troughs. Don't touch her! Do not touch her!
You may be surprised to learn wet markets, where live animals are sold on the spot, are also in the United States.
There are over 80 wet markets still operating in the New York City area alone.
In Brooklyn, Astoria, Flushing, the Bronx, and Harlem.
Careful with the feces. You don't want to bring that feces home.
There's heads, guts, just leaving it on the sidewalk.
Why are these live markets in our neighborhood, right next to a dental office?
We can't be pointing the finger at China when we have the same or worse conditions here. It doesn't matter whether they're wild animals or domestic animals.
Live animal markets are a breeding ground for disease, and indeed, the next pandemic may come from live bird markets in New York City rather than wet markets somewhere in South Asia.
Does it now concern you that you have a live animal market in your own backyard?
Everybody gets upset, but the health department, nobody wants to do anything. If you don't like it, don't come by there. Because unfortunately, I personally can't do anything.
first association is, oh, those are in China. We don't have those here.
We are here in Jamaica, Queens at a slaughterhouse, and we already see filth and excrement so close to the sewers. There are over 80 slaughterhouses in New York City, and whether you call them live animal markets, wet markets, slaughterhouses, the nature of these industries is exactly the same.
Many activists, including myself, have been documenting these conditions for years. Basically, we're just going to go in, take a little walk around, see what violations we're going to spot.
When entering the slaughterhouses, we have to be creative about how to capture footage. And every time we notice a handful of health and animal cruelty violations.
These live animal wet markets represent a perfect storm for zoonotic animal to human disease transmission because you have these crowded cages in these markets contaminated with blood, urine, feces of species mixed together in a breeding ground for disease.
And for whatever reason, on occasion, these activities can get contentious.
They try to kick you out, they get really defensive, very aggressive.
It's a public sidewalk.
No one was wearing gloves in there. So they just splash water here. I don't know if it's a threatening tactic or what.
You're not buying anything, get out. Get out.
Don't
get
touch
out,
me.
Get out.
Do
Get
not
out
touch me.
Get the fuck out of the store. You walk in one more time, I fucking hit you.
In January, I was filming from a sidewalk actually, so it's 100% legal. Got debris on the sidewalk. Do you see any water troughs anywhere for them? I don't see any water troughs.
Get the fuck out. Get the fuck
Don't touch her! Do not touch her!
Get the fuck out.
Do
Get the fuck.
At a certain point, we have to recognize when a practice is a hazard to all human life on this planet, and we have to adjust accordingly.
Pandemics are always a matter of when, not if. As devastating as COVID-19 has been, according to the CDC, the leading candidate for the next pandemic is a bird flu virus called H7N9, which is 100 times deadlier than COVID-19.
Can we just say that? Can that be the whole thing? It's so obvious.
What's obvious?
Shut this shit down. That's it.
Animal rights advocates descended on New York City's slaughterhouses today. Protesters gathered outside live animal markets throughout the city. Shut down the live animal market. A cry for change outside this slaughterhouse in Brooklyn, across the street from a park and a high school.
It was a citywide protest. So I was at one in Queens at a slaughter market. We were exposing the fact that not only are there wet markets operating in our own city, they are operating right now during the pandemic.
Past investigations have shown the repeated code violations many markets in New York City have faced. But market owners say their stores are culturally significant and shouldn't close.
Anything that people think is traditional and part of their culture, it's always difficult to get people to change that.
These people, they want to close it just in the crisis or forever?
Forever.
No. These people, they have a family, they support family. These people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. I don't know, maybe they got live chicken phobia. Some people, they're vegetarian, you know, they like to eat only vegetarian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over here, I have mostly Muslims, and you have Spanish people that really want fresh animals, fresh food, fresh meat, fresh everything.
But we're not targeting their culture or their religion or their traditions. This is protecting everybody's safety, especially those most directly exposed to it, which is the workers and the residents in those neighborhoods.
See that blood? Where's it coming from? Follow the blood. You're not gonna find the live market on the Upper West Side, on the Upper East Side. They obviously don't want us to see what's going on inside, and that's all right, because what we're seeing out here is enough. This is more than enough. The smell is horrible. The conditions are horrible. Crate after crate after crate. Is this life? Living in cages? This isn't life.
The truck comes and you see that, it's like, ooh. And whatever remains, it drops there, just, what happened here? Like it's normal. It's normal, nothing compared to what they threw in the truck, right? So it's all right.
We really feel that it is a common sense, obvious move to shut them down immediately and lead the way on a global shutdown of these live animal markets worldwide.
This week, 2 state legislators from the city introduced a bill that could ban live markets in the city.
The conditions are abysmal in some of these markets. And so I've introduced a bill into the New York State Assembly that calls for shutting down these markets immediately.
In many of them that I've seen, they're located in the middle of a residential area. And one trigger, one zoonotic virus, can be devastating in the communities that we represent.
So we need to be a strong political force for animals, but legislation can take years to pass. And what I've always learned from other movements is that you can't ever give up. You cannot give up. Perseverance is the only way you win and set these amazing precedents that then have a domino effect around the world.
You know, it's amazing that this bill was introduced to shut down these slaughterhouse operations, and we do hope it passes. But for now, they still remain open.
To human beings, and we are very good at justifying really indefensible things. But it is getting increasingly harder for people to be in denial about how destructive and deadly our animal agriculture system is, because literally life on Earth is at risk.
Pandemic risk is all about what we as a species eat, so how we treat animals can have global public health implications. In fact, the COVID-19 pandemic may just be a dress rehearsal. I mean, it could be like the dry run we needed, the fire drill to wake us from our complacency and reform the food system before it's too late.
Hi, my name is Jake, the filmmaker behind the Empower Yourself video. My intention for this was to make people realise that not everyone is okay. We're all going through something, especially now in these crazy times. And although someone may be smiling, they may be happy, beneath the surface it's far from that. Some people are struggling in many different ways. So just be kind, be humble, and treat people as you want to be treated.
We all have our journeys through this world, this life. We see others smiling, looking happy, while we reflect on our own moments of pain, our struggles, and wonder why us. But the truth is, sometimes a smile can hide 1,000 tears. Everyone is dealing with something. I've been lost in the reflection of what could be. I've been lost because there is no cure for what I have. Sometimes smiling is easier than explaining the pain. But I refuse to dwell on that. This is my life, and defeat is not an option. This is my life, and I choose to be better, to be stronger, to survive. This is my life, and I'm not defined by my disease. I choose strength. I choose to capture those moments in life that define me and make me truly smile. This is my life, and I choose to see the light and the beauty around me, because nobody knows when their journey will end.
Hi, I'm Jake, the filmmaker behind the Empower Yourself video. People inspire me in how they cope with things that they go through that you don't even realise, and it puts your own life into perspective when you think about some of the things you moan about, which is so trivial, but people are going through really serious things, and the positive way which they deal with stuff always inspires me to just be a better person and try and give back if I can. Challenges for this shoot, well, with the COVID at the time, you could only meet up with one person, so myself and Megan went for a lovely walk up a hill, so it was me on camera, no crew. I didn't even have a steady cam, I think. I was steadying the camera with a strap around my neck. And also I forgot my ND filter, and I wanted to shoot some shallow depth of field, so that kind of put paid to that a little bit. But we got around it. I think we got some good shots. People struggle in different ways, and people cope in different ways, and I wanted to be able to, if I could, do something that makes people realise that there are other people going through this, and to reach out and get help, realise they're not alone, and if that helps just one person, then it's all worthwhile. Just stay humble, stay kind, because kindness is literally free.
Here in St. Louis, 1 out of 5 individuals go to bed hungry each night. More and more people rely on food pantries every day. There are over 5,000 vacant lots in St. Louis. Walk by this empty lot each day. We were new to the community, and I was looking for an excuse, an opportunity, so I thought maybe we could start a community farm.
What makes our Central West End farm unique is that it was intentionally planted to provide healthy food to combat the existing hunger in our community.
This is very intentional. The food doesn't come to our lips. The people who volunteer don't get to take home their portion that day. And people realize that there's a greater common good that we can work towards.
We have a lot of food deserts in St. Louis, and the farm is one of the places where we can able to combat that.
I really like spending time at the farm, even if it's just for a few hours. There's a sense of peace that I get from coming into this urban farm that I know is supporting so many people that don't have access to healthy food in the city.
Central West End Farm is probably our primary supplier of fresh produce. This past year, we have had more new families and more new individuals come to us seeking help. Hunger is across the spectrum. It doesn't seem to be lessening.
When you have a limited amount of money coming in every month, and being able to go and get fresh vegetables and fruits is wonderful.
I come here for food. I live in subsidized housing in the area. I'm elderly, and I go to the pantry just to help subsidize my food.
I was coming to a food pantry. Matter of fact, I still do go to food pantries. And it's a help because I take care of 7 great grandchildren. And I don't get no money, no food stamps, no none of that stuff for them. I have to base it on my income and my income alone. I don't take my children to food pantries to eat, but I take the food home, fix it for them, and for them to eat.
Pantries, and especially fresh produce, is important because it helps families. You know, when you have to make a choice between rent, our medicine, and food is one of the only things you have a choice in whether you spend that money or not. And so that is often compromised. You may go hungry or you may get kicked out of your apartment. It's sometimes hunger is just easier to handle than being kicked out.
There was an elementary school on my path, and I always, as a background as a teacher and a professor, and the importance of learning outside the classroom, thought maybe I could just ask the school. Maybe their children would want to be involved.
The Central Weston Farm and our approach with multiple intelligences is really seamless and really fits together in such a nice and natural way. I think the most obvious intelligence might be around the naturalist intelligence and getting kids to appreciate the outdoors, getting children outdoors into the environment, the science of the farm, and growing and planting and working the farm and sort of understanding seasons, timelines, how you plant something and what it eventually produces and grows into.
What I like about the Central Weston Farm is that it's always cheery, it's bright, it's green, it's happy. If you're having a bad day, it lightens your soul and it makes you feel amazing.
I like learning about new things that I haven't really done before. And also, it's actually pretty fun to like hang out with the class and meet Arthur and Nancy. It's also fun to like pick and grow all of the fruits and vegetables that are here.
I was usually excited like to harvest stuff or water stuff. I really liked it because of all the like flowers and stuff, and I like seeing how like the difference of the plants and the vegetables growing and growing.
The farm serves that purpose for these young people to be able to come here, to be present, to observe, to investigate, and maybe perhaps experiment. All of this is part of their exploration, and it's a quality that serves them throughout their life, and a lot of that really begins right here at the farm. Our most popular crop is popcorn. For the students, I mean, they get to experience it from the very beginning where they plant that little kernel of seed to where you saw us harvesting it yesterday, and the corn stalks are 8-10 foot tall. So for students, it's a really valuable science lesson. They understand how the corn is pollinated, they watch it grow, they harvest it, they let it dry, they take the kernels off the husk. They really, from start to finish, are the ones that are really in control of the process. And then the crowning jewel is taking the kernels to the pantry and popping it, and along with lemonade and sandwiches and watermelon, you know, distributing it to their friends at the pantry. So it's a big hit and something that they really enjoy doing.
I think visiting the food pantry for the 4th grade students is the culmination of their work with the farm. And quite honestly, it is an eye-opening, very important piece to the work and the curriculum. And I can share this as the parent of a student who was in the 4th grade last year, just hearing her personal reflections about harvesting, helping to harvest the crops, and taking them to the food pantry, and then the awareness that there are people in our community who don't have some of the same resources we have, who depend upon a food pantry for resources and sustenance. Again, that sort of gets certainly right back to the interpersonal intelligences and helping children with perspective taking, helping children understand empathy, helping children understand who is in our community and sort of the wider boundaries that are there.
On the walk home, it's usually much quieter. Students are a little bit more reflective, more introverted, and thinking about what they had just experienced as part of that.
Kind of made me feel kind of sad because not everybody has enough money to do the things that they need.
It made me feel like a little sad because some people don't have a lot of the things that they need, but then I tried my best to do the best that I could of growing them and harvesting them so I could help.
It made me feel happy that he was giving food to people who didn't have food.
When Arthur first got permission to use this land, before he planted a seed, he went and met with the clients at the food pantries and asked them, what would they like us to grow? And the overwhelming response was collard greens. So we grew them, and when we put them on the tables at the pantry, the clients eagerly grabbed them to take them home and prepare them. So we planted more. And now, about 1/3 of the farm is collard greens, and it's still not enough.
Our favorite green that comes into the pantry is collard greens. They disappear almost as soon as they're set out. So when the people come in, they head right straight to see if there are any collard greens. And then they accept the mustard greens or the Swiss chard or the kale as a secondary thing. But everybody's question is, when are we going to have collard greens?
A lot of times when there's food left over, I have the opportunity to take the food and distribute it in the neighborhood to seniors and large families that do not have an automobile to come up here.
I like the greens especially. They're very fresh and they're nutritious. I take them home and cook them. And it just it helps me keep my health.
They bring them here for us to fix them, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the people that comes here to eat it appreciate it. And those that comes on the table to get it, they appreciate it. I'm allowed to cook it and then serve it to them. And they come back again and again and again. So the food that they donate to this location is good.
The greatest joy for me is when I'm with the clients at the food pantry and they say, Doc, you know, I get to serve tomatoes and collard greens at supper Sunday. I wouldn't have been able to do that. And you realize, you know, how important this is in the healthy life of these individuals who, many of which live in areas where they don't have access to buy it, and if they did, they couldn't afford it. So this is a real gift, which is the purpose of our farm. What we grow, we give to others. And to see that, you know, finally at the end of it, you know, after the growing and the picking and the delivering and the handing out of it, and the clients walking out the door thinking about, you know, Sunday supper.
We have had so many volunteers come eagerly participate in the farm, and one of the things that I find fascinating is that it provides opportunities for many and varied contributions and gifts.
Everybody has a little different reason of what they get out of it. We have a woman here who harvests, you know, every other day, 84 years old, you know, from Mississippi, where her grandmother, you know, taught her how to be a farmer. And she comes and it gets her up in the morning and she harvests the okra.
It's very therapeutic for me to spend time with my hands and knees on the earth. There's a lot of healing properties that come out from our earth and our plants.
Just knowing that a small seed that you can plant in the ground can turn into a beautiful flower or a fruit, it just makes me feel good. I like being outside in nature. It just makes me feel like I'm at home. It's like my place of peace.
There's nothing like being in nature and to be able to be at a place that grows this much food and to watch a plant go into the ground as a seed. It's incredible to watch the growth. I love the cycles of life that happen here.
I come to the farm with my mom, and I think it's really enjoyable to be with her, like weeding. Getting my hands dirty is fun. I feel like I'm part of the earth.
the most important aspects are Arthur and Nancy's nature, how open and accepting they are, and the community that they have provided here. This intergenerational mix is crucial.
One of the things that has come out of this is actually what we consider to be a new term, a gift garden. What we grow, we gift to others. We started it already. We have one across the street at the synagogue, one at the end of the street in a church. We're going to have one soon to be down the street at a school. We have the one behind us, a family, they donate theirs. People like being able to do something, and people oftentimes have leftover vegetables and they don't know what to do with it. So people are excited about the opportunity to do their little bits, think globally, but to act locally in a sense of being able to, through their own contributions, gift what they grow to the people who are really hungry.
Knowing that thousands of pounds are being donated to 2 food pantries gives me great hope for the future that we are going to solve this hunger problem that we have in our country.
Every human has the right to food. We'd like to ensure that every human in our community has that food and that it's healthy and fresh.
Hi, my name is Michał Zadara. I'm talking to you from Warsaw, Poland, in Europe. This is Films from the Smog Years. It's a series of short films. You're going to see 3 put together in one package. We have 7 of them. Short fiction films. At the same time, we were making these films to raise the consciousness about air pollution, and we had expert scientists and lawyers working on drafting an act for Parliament that any party could then use. Whatever party is interested in fixing the problem of air pollution in Poland can do so. So that's the intended effect of raising awareness with these films and at the same time working on an actual legal act.
O co chodzi?
To będzie film, seria filmów politycznych, o smogu. Nie chodzi o to, żeby przekonywać wszystkich, że to, co robimy, jest polityczne, tylko żeby naprawdę zrobić coś politycznego, coś, co naprawdę się wtrąca, coś, co naprawdę zmienia rzeczywistość. Krótkie filmy, które są próbą stworzenia sztuki, która nie ignoruje rzeczywistości. Bo jak mówić o miłości, jeśli umierasz z powodu zatrutego powietrza? Jak mówić o historii, jeśli twoje dziecko w brzuchu nie rośnie z powodu zatrutego powietrza? My wszyscy wiemy, że jest problem, ale dalej robimy sztukę, tak jakby problemu nie było. Te same powtarzające się tematy. Jednostka, społeczeństwo, Polska. A to, że jest zatrute powietrze, to zmienia wszystko. I trzeba robić sztukę inaczej, a nie mówić o tak zwanym człowieku.
No, tylko to nie będzie taki film problemowy, że jak nam wszystkim jest ciężko, no bo zdychamy, bo tego nikt nie chciałby oglądać. Nie, to będzie coś, co każdy chce zobaczyć, bo to będzie ważne, ale też śmieszne, bardzo śmieszne. To będzie właściwie czysta rozrywka o smogu, a właściwie nie tyle o smogu, co po prostu, będzie smog. I na przykład jeden chudy, drugi gruby idą ulicą i ten chudy nagle się schyla, no bo coś zobaczył, ale nie widzi co to, no bo smog, a ten gruby się przez niego przewraca, no bo go nie widział, no bo smog. I to będzie taka komedia chorobowa z happy endem.
żeby zrobić coś naprawdę politycznego.
Coś, co jest ważne, ale też śmieszne.
Co naprawdę się wtrąca.
Bardzo śmieszne, bo to będzie taka czysta rozrywka.
Co naprawdę zmienia rzeczywistość.
Ale o smogu.
Krótkie filmy, które są próbą stworzenia sztuki, która nie ignoruje rzeczywistości.
Musisz bezpośrednio ingerować w rzeczywistość. Robienie teatru politycznego nie ma sensu, bo teatr nie jest polityczny. To jest jak robienie teatru religijnego, który też nie ma sensu, bo teatr nie jest świątynią. Jeżeli chcesz być polityczny, to musisz robić politykę albo walczyć w sądach o wyroki, które ci uporządkują rzeczywistość. Ty mówisz sobie, o, zmieniam świadomość w teatrze, ale tak naprawdę jej nie zmieniasz, bo ci widzowie już to wiedzą. I to jest atrapa zmiany, to jest atrapa wtrącania się.
Aha.
To będzie film. Seria filmów.
Robienie teatru politycznego nie ma sensu.
Politycznych. O smogu.
Bo teatr nie jest...
Że to, co robimy, jest polityczne.
Polityczne i to jest jak robienie teatru religijnego.
Tylko o to, żeby zrobić naprawdę coś politycznego, coś, co naprawdę się wtrąca.
No na przykład jeden chudy, a drugi gruby i idą...
I naprawdę zmienia rzeczywistość. Krótkie
idą
filmy,
ulicą,
które są próbą stworzenia sztuki, która nie ignoruje rzeczywistości.
I nagle ten chudy się schyla, no bo coś zobaczył, ale nie widzi co to, no bo
jak
smok.
mówić o miłości, jak umierasz?
A ten gruby się przez niego
Jak
przewraca.
umierasz z powodu zatrutego powietrza.
Nie jest polityczny i to...
No bo go nie widział, no bo smok.
Jak mówić o historii, jeśli twoje dziecko w brzuchu nie rośnie z powodu zatrutego powietrza?
No komedia chorobowa z happy endem.
Bo teatr nie jest świątynią.
Dane jasno wskazują, że zanieczyszczenie wynikające z transportu drogowego powoduje, że płuca dzieci nie rosną tak, jak powinny. Dzieci z obszarów najbardziej zanieczyszczonych
No, czyli z Polski.
mają o 5 do 10% mniejszą pojemność płuc i one tej różnicy już nigdy nie nadrobią. Jakie masz ważniejsze sprawy?
Dzień dobry.
Jakie masz ważniejsze sprawy?
Bitki w sosie wołowym.
Jakie masz ważniejsze sprawy niż sprawa zatrucia powietrza?
Słuchajcie, byłem ostatnio na świetnym spektaklu. 2 godziny i po prostu nie wiesz, o co chodzi. No to była sztuka.
Skażone cały świat. Nie wszystko w tym kraju jest skażone, cały świat. Nie wszystko w tym kraju jest.
Kawa biała?
Jest z migdałowym? Bo mam w umowie, że z migdałowym.
Jasne.
Dzięki, Mateusz.
Kawa biała? Zielona. Herbata.
Po raz ostatni widzisz Warszawę. Wyjeżdżasz.
Nie słyszę.
Wyjeżdżasz, ale stoisz tutaj. To jest mało
Nie
dialogu.
słyszę, bo jest cholerny hałas.
Mało dialogu. Wszystko musi być w oczach. Dramat człowieka opuszczającego ojczyznę. Na zawsze. To będzie ostatni ich pocałunek. Ona wie, że on jest ostatni. Musi być jasne, że ona nie zawróci. Ona go zostawi, okej? Ty wiesz, że nie masz żadnych szans, ale mimo to biegniesz. Powtórzmy tekst.
Nie cały ten kraj jest skażony.
Nie wszystko w tym kraju.
Nie wszystko w tym kraju jest skażone.
Wszystko,
Cały świat taki jest.
nie cały.
Teraz pocałunek, tak?
Dobra, zrobimy próbę.
Co?
Co się stało?
Nie będziemy się całować przez maski. Jakaś idiotyzm.
Nie przesadzajmy, no. To
Dobrze.
chwilę potrwa, no. Nie będę się całował przez maskę, rzeczywiście.
Co?
Spróbujmy bez.
Ja się nie zgadzam.
Czemu?
No kurczę, widzieliście? Przy tym powietrzu? Ja mam w kontrakcie jedno 40-sekundowe ujęcie bez maski i bez...
Ale próba na chwilę może...
Kurczę, przy tym
Dobrze, spokojnie, proszę o spokój. Zróbmy w takim razie ujęcie. Danusia, Danka, Danka, zróbmy ujęcie od razu. Proszę, dobrze? Poproszę, że przygotowujemy do ujęcia. Weź maski.
Maskę oddam, jak ona powie akcja.
Uwaga! Uwaga, będzie ujęcie. Pamiętaj, Andrzeju, później chwilę wbiegnięcie swoje. I mamy gotowość. Kamera. Poszła. Akcja!
Nie wszystko w tym kraju jest skażone.
Wszystko.
Cały świat taki jest.
Nie cały.
A znasz ten? Przychodzi Polak do biblioteki, pełnej ludzi, podchodzi do lady i mówi do tej bibliotekarki: poproszę frytki, cheeseburgera i dużą kolę. A ta bibliotekarka patrzy taka zdziwiona, mówi: proszę pana, ale to jest biblioteka. A co on tak się rozgląda, nachyla do niej i mówi: poproszę frytki, cheeseburgera i dużą kolę. Albo ten. Jaki jest najpiękniejszy most na świecie? Ten most Beautiful. Albo jeszcze jeden. Jeszcze ten. Co mówi Rosjanka tuż przed tym, jak ukąsi ją pszczoła? Nie, pani Maju!
Chcesz coś? Co tak siedzisz? Chcesz coś?
Co ty, obraziłaś się? Mam fajny dowcip jeszcze jeden. Wisi Jezus w Watykanie. O, turyści.
Ten grill zatruwa powietrze. I ten wóz zatruwa powietrze. I te krowy z tych hamburgerów, jak jeszcze żyły, to też zatruwały powietrze.
No ale teraz już nie żyją, no to nie zatruwają, nie? Jezus, no przecież ja potrafię o tym nie myśleć. Potrafię oddzielić smak dobrego mięsa od tego, co musiała wycierpieć taka krowa, póki żyła.
Że jej dzieci zabierają na cielęcinę. Że nigdy nie wyjdzie na dwór. Że podłączona do maszyn jest.
Ja potrafię o tym wszystkim nie myśleć, kiedy jem kiełbachę.
Te kiełbasy są ze świń.
No widzisz, a teraz zobacz. Widzisz, jak ja o tym nie myślę?
Ona nie wychodzi na zewnątrz?
Możesz sobie nie myśleć, ale jej emisję musisz wdychać.
Krowy emisje?
Krowy to największe źródło gazów cieplarnianych. A żeby ta krowa żarła, to wyrąbali las.
Las?
Las. Żeby hodować paszę, którą ta krowa żarła. Na koniec palasz węgiel albo gaz, żeby tę krowę usmażyć.
Ale ja myślałem, że one są ze świn.
Czyli 3 razy nas dusisz. Wycinasz las, hodujesz krowę, grillujesz.
To ona jednak nie cierpi.
Cierpi jak cholera, ale ja potrafię o tym wszystkim nie myśleć.
2 razy wieprzowe kiełbaski.
I co? Teraz tak po prostu spokojnie włożysz w siebie tą kiełbasę. Tylko po to, żeby za 14 godzin ją wysrać. Nie chce mi się tego oglądać.
Ona nie powinna tak do nas mówić.
A mój jest dobre.
Przez to, że ona nie je... Przez to, że ona jest wege, to ja już w ogóle nie jem nabiału.
Już.
Chcesz?
This is a global problem, and it's not just a problem in Poland. And when I lived in the US last year, for instance, I noticed that there was zero awareness in front of my kids' elementary school. Parents would just drive up with their cars right up to the front door of the elementary school where all the kids were going in, and they would just leave their cars on. And so the area in front of the elementary school was just incredibly polluted. So it's not just, of course, a problem in Poland where we're from. It's not just a problem in the places that you hear about, like China. It's a problem pretty much globally. The statistics are that some 80% or 90% of kids live in excessively polluted areas. Air pollution actually prevents your lungs from growing properly when you're a kid. So if you grow up in an area of high pollution, as a kid, you don't really have much of a chance to fully develop all of your bodily functions to function at the highest level. I try as much as I can to bike with my kids to school, for instance, in the mornings. And I would bike to school, and just this was one of the happiest moments of my life. And then I started reading up on air pollution because people started talking about how bad the problem is in Poland. And I finally understood that we would be biking through these incredibly high levels of pollution every day. So that means that this really healthy moment, this really happy moment that we had every morning turned into this moment where I realized that I was actually poisoning my kids and myself. So that's something that happened at the same time. We were making these films to raise the consciousness about air pollution, and we had expert scientists and lawyers working on drafting a bill, an act for Parliament that any party could then use, that would regulate the main sources of air pollution, which are heating here in Poland and transport all around the world. Now, at this point, the bill is still not totally finished, so we are still working on getting some funding to finish writing the bill. We're still working on finding funding in order to finish this act, in order to give a fully professionally finished drafted piece of legislation to all the parties in Parliament, and then whatever party is interested in fixing the problem of air pollution in Poland can do so. So that's the intended effect of raising awareness with these films and at the same time working on an actual legal act. These films were supported from a city revitalization grant. So the biggest difficulties that we had was thinking of a way to make the problem of air pollution, which is a really serious and difficult and depressive problem. The biggest difficulty was to think of films that would be enjoyable to watch, but at the same time retain the seriousness of the issue. So we ended up writing 7 films, producing 7 films that were all attempts to make a normal kind of film with a normal plot, with comedic elements, with dramatic elements, but then also to always have this issue of air pollution be central to the negotiations between the characters.
It's quite easy to just walk by it and not notice what it is. If you go around the whole city of LA, it's the same story. Oftentimes when I've taken groups on walking tours to share about the work that we're doing in the neighborhood, I'll stop and I'll have people guess what it is. They never guess that that's the drill site. They really are built in disguise. It was ridiculous that an industrial grade oil drilling facility would be literally next to homes and across the street from residential housing. Our goal from the get-go was to move it towards closure.
Stand up. Stand up and show me. It's so beautiful. It's just this one, I need to cut it. The banana should have been in here. So this one need to go. Should I cut it? Banana tree is coming down. what was little. This is what happened over there. We just ate this part. I grew up in a very large property from my grandparents. We plant everything beautiful. When I came to buy this house, I started planting trees around it just to have the illusion that I was living in a much larger property. I spend most of my free time with my plants. I don't have a lot of resources, but one dies, another one is replaced. This is the oldest tree that we have in here, the Tangerine Tree. I think I have lost like a total of 8 to 9 trees. They don't go beyond 7 years. It's in certain areas, it's like it's a current under, and it's damaging the roots of the trees. Most of those plants you see, they're in pots. They don't go deep. You never may associate anything. And there, at that moment, precise moment, and we start hearing more people saying exactly the same. I say, "Ooh, wait a minute." All of a sudden, a group of workers came to clean up our cars. Oil was spilling all over. I find out that we have an oil field next to our houses, but we never knew what was going on.
Los Angeles is home to the largest urban oil field in the country. There are almost 800 active wells in the city of Los Angeles and almost 4,000 in LA County.
Here we have an active oil and gas extraction site sitting in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
So close you can touch the window and the wall at the same time.
This drill site was established in 1965.
But no environmental impact report has ever been done. I had just finished my master's in public health. When I saw how close the site was to homes, all of my public health alarm bells were going off.
Over the years, there have been concerns whether their activities could be linked to various illnesses.
When you think about health and you think about environmental health especially, proximity matters. So if there's an industrial facility working next to homes, the chances of getting severely sick goes up substantially.
Trees tell you everything, and if trees are dying for no reason at all, whatever happens to the person when it's breathing and living in this area.
This has been an issue that has been unaddressed for decades. Shouldn't have ever even been given the permits to be built.
If you do not go and talk to the public officials to tell them what happened in your community, they wouldn't know ever. I'm not intimidated by the public officials. I will do it. Yes, with my broken English, but I will do it. House is north of the site for more than 30 years. A lot of my children were growing up. My son, 7 years old, And then he started bleeding and bleeding. He was choking in blood. He was in his own blood. The doctors never gave me the real reason. Unfortunately, when I realized it had something to do with the environment, is when I started losing my trees and my garden. And then people start talking about all the problems, the same symptoms as he had.
2 other children have problems with asthma, with breathing problems. My entire home smells like diesel fuel, burning rubber, and sometimes raw eggs. The smells give me headaches and nausea.
Mr. Irving, I'm a former Army officer and a master planner for war zones. In Iraq and Afghanistan, we would have never placed this kind or this volume of hazardous materials this close to living quarters.
Some of the chemicals that I have documented that are definitely used on a regular basis at the site include chemicals that are endocrine disrupting. They can harm your regulation of your hormones, cancer-causing agents, neurotoxins, things that would impact your nervous system. Nosebleeds, that's something that is really highly correlated with oil and gas activities. One time in 2014, 4 acid tanker trucks came onto the site. All the plants downwind of the site on their own property turned brown simultaneously and died.
This never would happen in a neighborhood that is white and wealthy. This unprotected drilling and production that is going on so close to residents is really unconscionable.
In West LA, some of the sites are required to have an entire building built around them. They're required to use only electric-powered equipment, less diesel, less emissions. But none of those were required of Jefferson. What we tried to argue for was this site has not only violated its existing permits, but why is it less stringent, permitting than the ones in West LA?
This is what you're dealing with. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. Maybe you understood everything I said.
I did.
Oh, thank you. It's very disorganized. I didn't write it. I just lived through it. This was exactly the reason I am here. I was a union leader at this age. I was 19. We were in El Salvador. My friends were killed in there. At 22, I had to leave the country. They were against union leaders because once you get organized, you get power. This is now my city, my community. It's like I love the city. And I just love, I think it's my country. Los Angeles is my country, my little country. And I decided that it was time for me to start getting active. I started to have my groups, clean up on the street, having party with the children, make them feel belong to. Unless you feel like this is your community, you're not going to protect it. My husband, he developed a tumor. He had cancer. It was, oh gosh, how can this happen?
Just in the past 5 years, I've learned of 8 different people who have either survived or passed away from cancer. just on these two blocks right next to the site.
It's too many. I know cancer happens, right? I'm not gonna say it, oh, this is what happened, but it's too many around it. I don't think things are changing for the better at this time. By now, I was thinking that they already were well informed what is going on in our communities and make up their mind.
In the meantime, more people are being exposed to the emissions and health risks that the sites pose. LA and California has always been leaders and drivers for this kind of climate policy. But when it comes to extraction, it feels a little bit like, what does LA want to be about?
We're taking an important step today. The City Council President, Herb Weston, is going to be today introducing a motion for the city to explore ending urban oil drilling. Let's go on in, y'all.
Campaign after campaign. I feel tired about it. The problem is, why do I have to do it all my life, right? I like to see it, okay, now I can relax.
Could you ever relax?
No, not my nature. Not my nature. No, I cannot relax. Nobody else gonna come and tell your story. For that reason, you keep working.
Go ahead. I live 2 houses away from Jeffersonville site. I'm lost for 30 years, and those years I have not witnessed how disrespectful these sites are to our community. Nobody ever has come to tell us what is going on behind those walls.
As we started learning a little bit more about the issue of oil drilling citywide, we learned that there might be an opportunity to do something on a larger scale. This concept of buffer, putting a numeric distance of how far back an oil well should be from homes, seemed to be the most protective.
These sites are not belonging in our communities. We know the chemicals they use are very dangerous to our health. I have lost 10 trees in my yard. When they reach certain they just die.
The goal is to encourage the city of LA to see this as a public health crisis and to start phasing out all these wells that are way too close.
My husband has cancer. Some people have cancer around there. I urge you. Thank you very much. Your time is up.
After you pass, you leave everything behind and you leave something that is going to last forever. No oil fields and this community, a better quality of life for everybody else. It's the most beautiful thing to do for others. He was so brave, confronted the cancer. thinking that he was getting better and better, but no, it took him. Very hard, very hard.
I think Frank's passing maybe reminded everyone that this is a life and death issue, that it is worth trying to pursue, it is worth working towards its closure because it's affecting, real people's lives.
Have you ever thought about not planting anymore?
Oh, no. I think I was going to keep planting these plants. I find ways to put pots in there and keep it green. It's kind of funny the way I feel. It's like the more challenges I have, the more determined I am to stay in this community, an opportunity to do things better for other people. This one will break. See how easy they break if you don't tie them up together? This one, it will grow again. This one is alive. This one is alive. For some reason, it's alive. I can see it's green. See? In a way, I didn't believe that it was possible to close this place.
In 2019, we got that final determination. It's requiring the Jefferson Jail site to close and remediate the land.
It's rewarding to see that something is better because I was part of it. Finally felt grounded like a plant in here.
Hi, I'm Rose McQueen, and I'm a Child is a simple, whimsical story where a boy sees firsthand the effects of global warming.
What will I know, will I know, will I know? How's life gonna go, gonna go, gonna go now? Or will I go down? 'Cause I'm chow, chow, chow with book, book, book. Chow, chow, chow with book, book, book. Just 'cause I hold it doesn't mean I grasp it. Just 'cause I see it doesn't mean I know it. No, just 'cause I touch it doesn't mean I feel it. Got a long way to go, 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 go. What will I know? Will I know? Will I know? What road will I go? Will I go? Will I go down? No, will I go down? 'Cause I'm a chow, chow, chow with bug, bug, bug. Chow, chow, chow with bug, bug, bug. Just 'cause I hold it doesn't mean I grasp it. Just 'cause I see it doesn't mean I know it. No, just 'cause I touch it doesn't mean I feel it. Got a long way to go, 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 go. And they all know, no, no, for sure. Go down the road, road, road. I know for now. Yeah, for now. For now. Chow, chow, chow. Chow, chow, chow. Chow, chow, chow. Chow, chow, chow. Chow, chow, chow with bug, bug, bug. Chow, chow, chow with bug, bug, bug. Just 'cause I hold it doesn't mean I grasp it. Just 'cause I see it doesn't mean I know it. No, just 'cause I touch it doesn't mean I feel it. Got a long way to go. To go.
저니까 많이 나왔습니다.
그래. 내 전단할게.
아, 그게 알아. 아끼도 하는 게 없다.
그래.
그렇습니다. 그냥 하자.
하필 글로 떨어져가지고. 아니 그러니까 이 양아치 같은 것들이 왜 우리만 또 단속을 하냐고. 일단 알겠습니다. 형님도 조심하세요. 이거 앉아라. 네가 그 가랑 같이 살았지?
영입니다.
그래, 영희. 그 형제 어쩌더노?
형제 없습니다.
그래, 아유. 나도 딸만 하나다. 야, 너무 걱정하지 말고 뒤처럼 우리가 알아서. 알았지?
그럼 장례식은 언제 합니까?
뭐라고?
영희 장례식 말입니다.
누가 그 홍매야. 나 오늘 단속반 그 시기 때문에 정신이 하나도 없다. 응? 저 가족들한테 연락하려고 있으니까 연락 되거든. 연길로 보내줄 테니까 걱정 안 해도 돼.
그럼 그때까지는?
아니 가족들 치료해주시기다. 그래야 가도 가는 길이 안 편하겠나. 일단 일 바쁘니까 나중에 또 얘기하자.
걔한테 패라. 왜 밥 먹으러 안 왔노? 아이고, 공장은 또 돌아간다. 그자?
실장님, 영희는 어떻게 됐습니까? 진짜 중국으로 보내주는 겁니까?
뭐다 웃기다.
야?
그만 사장이 묻어주란다. 알려지면 우리나라 사장이는 뭐 좋을 거 없잖아.
이런 게 어디 있습니까? 아이, 요즘 아닌 것 같습니다. 사람이 죽었지 않습니까?
알지. 근데 왜 하겠노? 먹고 살라면 먼저 뭐 하겠노?
실장님, 영희 지금 어디 있습니까?
홍매야, 잘해줄기다. 밥이나 먹자.
ගින්ගොඩ දිහා බලාගෙන කතා කරන්නේ ඕනේ. ඕනම කතා කර කර ඉඳලා ඊට පස්සේ ෂේප් එකේ හිමින් මේ ඔලුව උස්සන්න නැත්නම් මේක කරගෙන යන දවස. දැන් ගමනක දිහා බලන්න.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our animal rights panel for Flicks4Change 21. My name is Andrew Steele. I am the Flicks4Change president. And here we have James Hawthorne, our festival director here. And we also have the director, producer, editor, cinematographer of the fight to ban live animal markets, Jordan Ehrlich here. Jordan, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for the film that you've created. It's for those of us who've seen it, it definitely, you know, had chills down my arm. I'm getting goosebumps kind of thinking about it. It's just terrible what so many of these animals are going through. Did you say there was 80 million animals being treated?
Well, there's 80 billion farm animals that are slaughtered every year, and most of those animals are treated similar to the way even the animals in the small markets are treated that are shown in the film. So yeah.
You hooked me from the very beginning in the film. As soon as I saw that there are over 80 live animal wet markets in New York City alone, I was shocked. And I might be the festival director of, you know, this festival, but one of the coolest perks of the job is learning about the very issues that are in the films that we screen. And I was shocked to see that, as I'm sure many of our audience members are going to be. And that touches on a lot of other issues going on in our country with anti-Asian sentiment, where we're pointing the finger on COVID-19. So we'll get to that in 1 second. But one thing that I wanted to ask you is, you're definitely right, an animal rights activist, but why did you make this film specifically about banning the wet markets? And what action would you like our audience to take after watching it?
Well, I made this film specifically because, you know, I do research into animal rights and animal issues, and I have a lot of sources of activists on the ground, and I consider myself pretty knowledgeable, but I didn't even know how many wet markets or live animal markets were in New York City. And once I saw that, and I saw, you know, obviously what we're dealing with, zoonotic diseases and dealing with the pandemic now, And this was ripe for yet another pandemic, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in America. I mean, the health risks are there. And so I wanted to document the actual conditions in these markets. I wanted to go there myself. I'm in New York, so I wanted to see what it was like and get firsthand experience, as well as interview and feature the activists who have been doing this research and investigations for years. So we compiled their footage as well to, put it into, a larger story.
Yeah, one thing I was really blown away with was just the quality of the editing, the cinematography. I'm sitting there watching it thinking to myself, this could be something that you see on Dateline or on 60 Minutes. So congratulations to you as a filmmaker for putting something together that is incredibly professional and that I think is of a quality and importance that it could be on, any news program that, our audience watches on, a network or cable television.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is I didn't want just other animal rights people to watch this. I wanted it to, because the story is so compelling and the footage is so shocking, and it's the issue is so important. I wanted to have the immediacy and the urgency in every edit. So it hooked people from the beginning and kept giving you more and more information. So, in our sort of ADD world, I just wanted to make sure that people understood how important this was every step of the way.
You said you were surprised yourself as the filmmaker that there were over 80 live wet markets in New York City. How do you even go about finding something like that out? Because I have to imagine that a lot of these are word of mouth, sort of underground. You only know about them if you are a member of a particular cultural or ethnic community that maybe frequents live animal markets. How do you even find that out as a filmmaker?
Yeah. They're not so underground. They're just not in the neighborhoods where they're not in New York City proper. They're in the outer boroughs. I live in Brooklyn, and there's certainly a bunch in Brooklyn, but where I live in Brooklyn, there's none in my 20 square block radius. I knew that there are slaughterhouses or small slaughterhouses pretty much everywhere. I just didn't realize that there were so many in any given neighborhood. And so I guess I have a lot of sources who are in the animal rights community, and they showed me some of this footage. And when I saw how close these markets were to schools and residential areas, that's what shocked me.
And how has the film gone and impacting, making these wet markets banned? Has it moved the needle at all?
Well, it certainly spread a lot of awareness. I mean, we have, upwards of 8 million views online. And, the comments, like with anything, there's crazy comments, but then there's a lot of people who weren't aware of it. And so there's a portion of those people who actually messaged or got in touch with local officials. It took years and a pandemic for just 2 local officials to actually sponsor a bill in the New York State Assembly. And it's, it doesn't have a lot of support. And so it's just sort of in limbo in the assembly. So we'll see if it goes further, but in terms of action people can take, that would be one, is to get in touch with local officials. I mean, New York's not the only place where this is happening. I mean, all over America and other countries as well that you wouldn't think have these markets have them.
You explained an approach that I thought was really excellent, in that you worked with a lot of other animal rights groups in making this film. And I'm certainly a believer, after running this festival for 5 years, that when nonprofits work together on a typical issue, they can move the needle a lot more. Similarly, perhaps maybe our audience and the nonprofits you worked with to help create the film can work together to move the needle with local government, state legislature.
Yeah, because I don't consider myself an activist per se. These issues are very important to me, but my goal as a filmmaker and a documentary filmmaker is to feature the people who are actually doing the day-to-day hard work. And that's who I wanted to feature and tell their story. And then through their story, tell the story of the animals.
Something else that you did, maybe, I don't know if it was intentional or even inadvertently, is when I watched your film, I'm thinking, wow, this touches on so many other socially conscious topics besides simply animal rights and also global health. It addresses animal rights, it addresses racial discrimination, the COVID-19 global health crisis, and personal and community activism. These are all socially conscious topics that I think were represented very strongly in your film, which is saying something because it's one short film, of around 10 minutes in length, right? Which of these issues resonate most deeply with you, or which of these issues impacted you emotionally in the making of this film?
Well, it's interesting you said that, because it was slightly unintentional, because on some level, because the way I look at it is that they're all interconnected. The way we treat animals, the way, our communities are set up, the way the food system is set up, the way our legal system is set up affects us all. Certainly environment, health, food are all very interconnected. And typically with any issue, the people who get the short end of the stick are the people who have to live, in these neighborhoods where they don't have enough clout or legal standing to fight off having a slaughterhouse in their neighborhood. So they're certainly the ones who are most affected. And it's out of sight, out of mind for a lot of other people, even though eventually, indirectly, they will be affected. When there's yet another pandemic, whether it's a year from now or 20 years from now, it's all, we're all going to be affected.
You would think we've learned, by now from, swine flu, from the avian bird flu, SARS, all of that, all of those happening really in the last 20, 25 years. But the fact that, these practices still go on should be very disconcerting, especially with, how densely packed certain population centers are, the ease of travel, et cetera. My question for you, and this is, I guess, kind of the $1 million question. It's okay if you don't have an answer to it, because I don't think many people do. Any ideas on how we straddle the line between respecting each other's cultures, what we eat, the food we eat, the way we eat it and consume it, while protecting public health and safety?
I probably have a slightly more controversial answer to this, because I believe that all communities and all races torture animals equally. There's no one that's, white rich people and people impoverished neither get off the hook for doing bad things to animals, is the way I look at it. And if we treat animals poorly, whether it's your religious practice or whether you're using your religious practice or culture as an excuse, I personally don't think it's okay. We should be sensitive towards it. We should make whatever we need to do to educate and do what we need to do to have other opportunities, whether it's, a produce store instead of a meat market. But yeah, it's a tough question. But the problem is that the way we treat animals is ubiquitous.
Yeah. To what degree do you think maybe the answer then lies in education, to really making sure people understand the risks that they're undertaking by supporting these markets, patronizing them, not petitioning local government to put an end to them? To what degree do you think education might be the answer? Or do you think it's something else?
I think there's so many things that need to happen. It's not just one answer. Education is huge. That's why I make these videos and these films, is to spread awareness as much as I personally can. There's the legislation at a federal level, all the way down to a local level needs to be dealt with, whether it's subsidies for these kinds of foods that are not helpful to our environment and to our health, to laws. In New York City, for example, there was a law to ban foie gras, the sale of foie gras, and just having that law passed about 1.5 years ago, now it is illegal to sell it. So that's just one example. If we could do that for various other things, that would be great. But so yeah, it's got to be federal downwards to local, whether it's nutrition education, subsidies for these, for more nutritious foods, school curriculums, videos like what I'm doing. I mean, it's got to be everything.
You know what you just said, I wanted to bring up one film that our audience should maybe look at as a compare and contrast. Growing for Good. It's urban farming for the hungry. And, you know, these folks in poor part of St. Louis bought this huge plot of land. They were able to get it for very little. And it's a great example of a community coming together to provide nourishing plant-based food for people that they're saying that most of these people will come to the market or come to the shelter and they'll have fresh produce, whereas before it was all out of a can. And then they're also working with the local schools to get kids involved with getting their fingers dirty, hands in the soil, teach them about community service and being able to make a difference in people's lives and get them goods that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. So it's something that impacts all different parts of the community in a lot of different ways. You talked about a produce store instead of an animal market. Are there any other steps? That's definitely a film that I encourage our audience to take a look at, you know, in addition to this one. I think we have them here, you know, back to back, or at least here on the same program. What about folks that are, that want to take a step, but let's say they're not ready to go vegetarian or go vegan yet? A lot of people, sometimes they have to start with a baby step. Is there a baby step that you think does any good at all if people are still going to eat animals or animal products, or is a baby step not enough?
Well, I mean, it's a tough question because just replace it with any other issue. Racism. I'm only going to take baby steps to be less racist. You know, it just doesn't make any sense. So, you know, again, it's education. It is, you know, there is federal government issues that need to, or steps that need to be to take place, but it also needs to be personal responsibility. I mean, we got to just try to take upon ourselves to eat less animals. So whatever that might be for anyone, then do what you can. You know, you know, we're to a point where I think the education is there. So on some level, people understand that what we do to animals isn't great, that for the most part, it is healthier to eat a plant-based diet. So it's just getting people to take that first step. So I don't 100% know what that is. So I don't have the exact answer, but I know that I talk about it whenever I can.
So further on that education, and I want to commend you for putting your time and efforts into educating people on things that you think are this important, and that's brilliant. As a filmmaker, there is a number of different ways. You're an editor as well. You've got so much footage. How do you go through what you show and what you don't? Because I know at the end of the film, there's probably one of the most, for me, one of the most graphic, which is, it's not even graphic, but it's kind of more suggested violence. And that's really stirring, and the camera just stays on those chickens like for, you know, a good, you know, and you just see how that's affecting them. Did you have like a lot of footage that you didn't use because you thought this is too explicit? And, you know, so tell me, how do you go through choosing what you use?
Unfortunately, there was no shortage of, it's one of the reasons I went to these places myself. There was no that I saw where I was like, oh, this animal's treated great. And they quietly went into their, to their, none of that never happens. You know, the biggest myth in America or in the world is that most animals live a humane life and have a humane death. And that's just not the case. So all the footage is horrific. So I went through hundreds of hours, literally hundreds of hours of footage. And because it's the internet and because, you know, there's sensitivity there, I wanted to not get, you know, a warning, you know, one of those sensitivity warnings. So I was very, and I know people want to look away. So I wanted to do whatever I could to make them look, but not shy away from how bad it truly is.
I think you did a wonderful job straddling that line because it's very difficult. You know, we've shown different films around animal equality, whether it's the way rodeo animals are treated or even Animal Equality's own films through the eyes of a pig. They had a chicken film as well. And people had to walk out of the theater and they didn't know what was coming. And they came to me and Andrew and said, why would you do this to us? And we said, because it's the truth and it's important and it's out there. And sometimes if we just stay comfortable, right, with the status quo, how is change ever going to happen? And so people, though, when they're emotionally disturbed or distraught at something they see, have a tough time reconciling that. But I think it's maybe time for all of us to get comfortable with being uncomfortable on some of these issues, especially if, you know, it's the truth.
Well, yeah, the question is, why can't they look at it? Yet, why can they eat it? I mean, so there's some cognitive dissonance there. And, you know, I think people will make any excuse they can make. You know, this isn't the kind of animals I eat. This isn't my culture. This isn't, you know, whatever they do to make themselves feel better about it. So yeah, it just needs to be shown as much as possible.
I think that's the call to action right there, to have people really check themselves and for hypocrisy and look at it and say, all right, you know, am I for this or am I not? And do my words and actions align? You know, and I think that's important for people that want to make that change. And if they're going to do it in a meaningful way, I guess they have to ask themselves that question. I think that really is hard to ignore if you do an honest inventory. I know we're running a little bit short on time, so I want to sum up a few things that maybe our audience can take with them to be the change. And I'd like you to chime in or just correct me if I get any of these wrong. But from our conversation today, it seems like we really talked about the importance of educating yourself, number one. Number two, being an activist, petitioning your politicians that represent you at the local, state, federal level. And then three, doing an honest inventory of your moral compass and looking yourself in the mirror and saying, no, I am choosing to eat animals because, or I am choosing not to because, and really not being hypocritical with it and doing a real gut check on it. Those are three items, three things that I really think we covered that our audience can take away. Is there anything else you'd like to leave them with today?
I mean, I would say number one is the most. I think, you know, even if you think humans should be eating animals and you point to, you know, the circle of life or whatever your excuse is, that's not the issue. The issue is, or the fact is, that most animals are treated horrifically to get to your plate. So you are paying for someone to torture an animal for you to eat, and you don't have to. So I would want people to be left with that understanding.
Andrew, any other thoughts or questions for Jordan today?
Yeah, I just think just like, you know, it's hard enough to look at these films, but that's the least that you can do. Like, if you're afraid to look at the films, then you really need to look at yourself and watch the films and then digest that and then see how you go from there. But thank you for making films like this that are hard to watch and obviously harder to make. I can't imagine what, trauma that you actually have from watching thousands of hours of this stuff. So, and you're obviously very, in touch with that. So just thank you for your sacrifice so that, millions of people can be affected and then hopefully change the way that we are.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
And one last thing I'd like to thank you on, George, is your spirit of collaboration and the fact that you reached out and said, well, who are the other experts and the difference makers, and working with them and making the film. And I would encourage our audience to do the same thing. If you were really moved by what you saw here and you want to be the change, you don't have to start your own movement. There are so many organizations doing good work. Align yourself with those that are, and simply lend your voice, your time, your efforts, and invite some friends to join you too, because there's so many good people out there making a difference that already have a great infrastructure and network. And it's through that collaboration and that involvement of the community that we can all probably move the needle a little more effectively.
Agreed.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our panel and filmmaker discussion on all of our films dealing with environmental issues. As festival director, I can tell you that the environment and climate change is one of the issues that I care about most, and I'm thrilled this year to have gotten so many wonderful submissions on this topic and to be able to include these 3 films in the program. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our very talented filmmakers and our nonprofit expert panelists. We have Rose from I'm a Child, the lovely animated film on global warming. We have Vaughn from Growing for Good, lovely film about sustainable food forestry in urban St. Louis. And then we have Caitlin Hines for Behind These Walls, about community activism and successfully putting an end to an oil field, essentially in the middle of residential Los Angeles. Finally, we have Dr. Barton Rubenstein from Mother Earth Project, and he is doing so many cool things around environmental activism and giving our audience really great ways to get involved, to be the change, to roll up their sleeves. And it's a great blend of art with activism. So we're really excited to have him here and have his reactions and provide some guidance on what our audience can do to make a change after seeing these films. So without further ado, let's hear about these great films from the filmmakers. Rose, I'm going to start with you with I'm a Child, and I would like for you to share with us what inspired you to make this film.
Well, what inspired me to make it was the climate crisis and the disinformation that's surrounding it.
Dr. Rubenstein, would you like to chime in on maybe sources of good and accurate information where people can really get the honest lowdown on what's going on with our changing climate?
As far as the actual information and where one should get that, I personally look to The Guardian and the New York Times, Washington Post as news sources that are very focused on the climate emergency. The United Nations has a panel of the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and they have a website where all the science is laid out very clearly and summarized for those that don't want to spend the time reading the dozens of pages.
Your film is really creative. I'm also interested in why you chose the genre of storytelling that you did, sort of an animated kind of music video sort of vibe, and then also what you hope our audience will take away from the film.
Well, the animated genre was the best way for us to get all of the maybe not main, but most of the crises that are affected by climate crisis into such a short film, because it is 3 minutes, and that was really the goal, was to speak to all of the issues or some of the main ones. And something that I hope people can take away from it is they can learn from the boy at the end, where he makes a change in his life, and he channels his world a little bit differently. And I hope we all can just make those little changes and new habits.
I just wanted to jump in and say, Rose, yes, you're right. In 3 minutes, it really does pack such a punch, because you go through all the different times where climate change is seen. I had to watch it a few times, and I watched it like 3 times in a row, and every time I got more and more into it. I'm interested to know, did you start with the song, or did you start with the vision of telling this story?
I had the song for a while, and we were trying to find a way to tell this story, because the song is really so focused toward disinformation and finding the right path and finding the right answer. I think we just thought it was perfect for the climate crisis.
It's truly excellent, Rose, and I'm so excited for our audience to get to see it. So
thank you very much for saying that.
I'm going to ask the same question of Vaughn about Growing for Good. And before I ask you what inspired you to put what's happening in St. Louis into a film and what you hope our audience will take from it, I want to applaud you on showing how no one social issue exists in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is this sustainable food forestry. Yes, there's an environmental component to it. you're helping the homeless and those with less means to get good and healthy food. So you have that angle. And then the fact that the kids are being able to be activists, participants in their own community. I think that's incredibly powerful. And, I would be interested as a follow-up going to, this community years after and compare it to other communities where they don't have something like this that brings people together around providing healthy food for everyone. It's just such a nice blend how a simple community-centric action can address a lot of pressing social issues, homelessness, educating our kids about the importance of activism in the environment, and also doing something good for the environment. So that to me is incredibly inspiring. What inspired you to actually take what's going on in St. Louis and make a film about it?
Well, I kind of fell into the project. So I did this with my husband, who is not here, Morgan, and his mother volunteered at a pantry, and we went and talked to the woman that ran the pantry, and she told us a little bit more about, her feeding the homeless and all that stuff. But then I realized that there was a farmer that provides fresh produce, and I've never seen that anywhere at a pantry. Usually it's canned goods or making hot meals and providing that kind of stuff. So then we met with the farmer, the urban farmer, and he told us how he works with this local school down the street. And so as we talked more about it, this piece was supposed to be only a 5-minute piece, but it ended up being a lot longer because, there are so many elements to it. And so that really was inspiring to me because I felt like, I learned that St. Louis had a lot of empty lots. And that was one of the things that inspired Arthur, who was the urban farmer. He wanted to feed people, but he also wanted to encourage people to, go to these empty lots or even on your own property, grow just a few vegetables. You always have a lot left over that you can't eat, and then you can provide this organic food to people in need because they need to have healthy food as well. And the part that really moved me and inspired me was actually the children. They not only learned how to grow organic food, but they learned about the social economic differences with people in need, and it really touched them. And so what I want people to take from this is that they can do this with their own community. I think several places, there are more churches now that use their own property to build an organic farm. I think that's what he's working towards now, is working with other communities, whether it's a school or a church or just an individual. He's trying to help them build, these organic farms for the needy. Like I said in the film, there are so many empty lots that's just sitting there, and you can just use that, and it doesn't take a lot. And once the community finds out what you're doing, there are so many people who want to help and volunteer. I mean, I was just amazed at how many different types of volunteers there are. And then just also to teach the children, what you can do outside, what you can do to help the community and everything like that. So that's what it was inspiring for me.
And Van, just quickly, James. It's interesting with so many vacant lots. Is there any protocol, the procedure to actually get clearance to do that, or can you just kind of go on to, obviously you don't want construction's about to happen and then where's my spinach, my collard greens? Do you know anything about the process of actually kind of getting that approved?
There is a process, actually. I don't know the details, but I think the mayor here in St. Louis was encouraging people to buy empty lots, and there were several different ways. Like, you can even buy a lot for a very small amount of money, and as long as you maintain it. I'm not really sure about the whole detail, the laws with it, but that's what I heard one volunteer was trying to do. he was actually featured in the film, and he was a volunteer. He was a college student, and he studied, environmental urban farming and all that stuff. And he got inspired, and I think he went to try to buy his own lot. And I'm not exactly sure what laws he had to go through, but I think one of the things is that you have to maintain it, like cut the grass, make sure everything looks neat, and things like that. But
that might be a nice follow-up. That might be a nice follow-up for for you as the filmmakers to get in touch with the people that are doing this and say, hey, what do you think about putting together a little online electronic kind of blueprint for these are the major steps, and then people can do this in their communities. And I remember watching this film going, wow, that is really unique, especially, in an urban center in this country. It's unique in this country. But what's fascinating to me is how it's just the way of life. For example, if you go to Italy, everybody's growing their own, food. And I visited Italy for the first time a couple years ago. And I remember going into the supermarket and I asked, where's the organic section? And they looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, it's all organic. You Americans are the only people who spray poison on the food that you're about to eat. So this not only are we providing, are we moving away from canned foods for the homeless? It's fresh, organic, and it's shocking that I'm shocked, watching this, going, wow, look at what they're doing in St. Louis. But wouldn't it be something if that could be the way in every city, right? Like it is in other countries. So that's something that really stood out to me on that film, Vaughn.
Thank you.
Last but not least, Caitlin, please tell us about Behind These Walls. I was really surprised to learn that they're drilling for oil literally an arm's reach away from the wall of somebody's home, and was disheartened to see how many people were falling ill, getting sick. And I was inspired to see how it took years, but through persistent activism, they got it shut down. So that, to me, is a great example of if growing for good is community activism, this really strikes me as both a blend of individual and community activism. Tell us about what inspired you to put this story to film, and what you hope our audience will take from it, please.
Yeah, so I started following this issue several years ago while I was getting my master's in journalism from USC. And just a couple blocks from the place where I was living was this oil drilling site. And it actually doesn't look like anything when you walk by it, but the more that I was talking to neighbors and, just getting to know the community, the more I heard these stories about this drill site. And it was interesting to see the gap in awareness between, this is a neighborhood that is near a university, but is a community, a low-income community of color as well. So you had students and people who were committed to living in this neighborhood who were aware of this issue, and then you had people who didn't necessarily speak any English, who didn't know what was happening and didn't know why their children were having these asthma attacks and why there were so many neighbors with cancer. And I started following this as part of my graduate program, and then continued living in the neighborhood afterwards, and just knew that it was important to be documenting what was happening, because as time went on, there were community groups who were paying attention and who were getting involved with this issue, and really had a very targeted approach to how they could best serve their community. And one of the ways that they were doing that was by looking at the regulations around this drill site. And so, not only seeing the impact of the site and what it was doing to the health and well-being of the people who lived there, but also seeing the very targeted work of the community activists who were working on this issue were really inspiring to me. And so I knew that it was something that needed to be documented. And, at the time when I started filming, we had no idea what was going to happen. It took 4 or 5 years for the site to be shut down. It's still not totally, it's not cleaned up. It hasn't been repurposed yet, but their work and the efforts that, they were doing were, I could just see how, they were going to succeed in some way. And so that was important for me to document. And yeah, I hope people, when you watch this, you can see how, having a very targeted approach can be successful. It might take a while, and it might take, finding, political, allies in there, but there can be change and there can be success. The site had existed since the 1960s and no one had ever paid attention to it. And suddenly, within 5 or 6 years of somebody calling attention to it, bringing the media into it, it's shut down now. So, change can happen with, very targeted, very, intentional and specific approaches to things, which I think, are something that can be applied to a variety of environmental threats that are happening in a variety of communities.
And simply deciding to use your voice and speak up. A lot of people don't think that they can make a difference, so they stay quiet. And the whole purpose of this festival and these films is to show people that that's just simply not true, that you can make a change when you start, speaking out and you start being strategic with it.
I think the most pleasant surprise was how many people were willing to help. Often, you just really don't know what you're going to get, if people are going to be willing to be interviewed, or how helpful they're going to be. And I'm really grateful for how many community members were willing to just even talk to me off the record and point me to different people. And even if you watch the film, you can see these community meetings, how many people show up and how many people are willing to testify. And I think often with these sorts of issues, they've been overlooked because people aren't vocal about it. And so seeing how a few people getting involved in their community can really bring so many more people alongside and bring this issue to the forefront. So that was a really wonderful thing to see and get to witness.
Do you have any updates on how far the plants can be from houses? Because I know that was one of the questions posed at the end of the documentary. Yeah,
so currently, so in 2019 in the summer, it was recommended by the Los Angeles Environmental Council that they implement a 600-foot buffer zone. At this point, it hasn't officially been put into place, and activists are actually hoping to roll that into another policy that will essentially shut down all of drilling in LA by making it an untenable land use. So at this point, it's been recommended, it hasn't been implemented, but they're hopeful that eventually, all of these drill sites will be shut down because of a zoning ordinance, essentially trying to go about it from a bureaucratic perspective as well.
And I think that's a great segue for Dr. Rubenstein to talk a little bit about everything he's doing with Mother Earth Project. And there's so many cool ways that you're driving activism and blending it with art. And tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that you're tackling involving the youth, trying to influence politicians in Washington, D.C. Let us know a little bit about what you're doing and ways that our audience can get involved.
Thank you, James, for that. And it's really an honor to be listening to these filmmakers. I really applaud your work. Our project is about activating all the small voices around the world. We have been distributing these play parachutes that you can see behind us, behind me, around the world. And it gives an opportunity for communities to talk about the environment, create art together. And during the process of creating art, they share their anxieties with each other. They discuss sustainable actions that they want to take together and learn from each other and what they're doing at home. And it's sort of an activation vehicle. It's sort of like a global visual language for expressing your concerns about climate change. So that's what our Parachutes for the Planet project is. And we're now in over 70 countries around the world. But the main thing that we still are focused on, and we supply our parachutes to Greta's Fridays for Future movement, to the Girl Scouts, and they're marching with these parachutes. They're taking their parachutes to politicians to show them visually how their communities are concerned about flooding issues that are caused because you've leased these lands to be deforested in Zimbabwe. for instance. I think really it's not only just a fact of activating people's voices, but we now have to take actions such as making sure the electricity coming into your house is coming from renewable sources, being a part of reforestation projects, tapping into solar projects, electric vehicles, and reduce our carbon footprint by adding better insulation in our houses or getting rid of the gas furnace and using electricity.
That's great. And I want to tell everybody that before Jane Fonda was marching on Capitol Hill on Fridays, Barton was out there on the National Mall with all these parachutes, with all of these kids. He got the band dispatched to come and perform in the rain on a cold day, and hundreds of people showed up. The news media was there. And so, you know, speaking up, peaceful protest, you know, it makes a big difference, I believe. And I was lucky enough to be there and feel the enthusiasm and passion that everybody had. And, you know, that gets noticed. It really does. And I think, you know, over the years, as you've seen the organic sections, and going back to growing for good, the organic sections in grocery stores growing and growing, and the prices coming down and down, simply being a responsible consumer can help make these goods more accessible to everybody because of a lower price point. Buying recycled toilet paper, you know, the toilet paper made from recycled paper, and same thing with paper towels, I think can make a big difference. And, you know, personally opting in for clean energy in your own home whenever and wherever you can is a way to make it less necessary for these oil fields to be existing in residential areas. So, you know, one person doing that might not make a difference, but one person doing it enthusiastically and telling everybody that they're doing it and using social media to talk about it, that I think can maybe have a real ripple effect. And that's, I think my hope that all of your art and Dr. Rubenstein, all of your efforts with your organization influence each individual to maybe do 3 actionable things on a daily basis that maybe they weren't before.
Yeah, I think that's great that you said that, James. And also I'd like to offer, you know, we basically ship free parachutes all over the world, and we'd be happy to ship a free parachute to your community if you wanted to engage a group of 10 to, you know, and more people to paint together and have that conversation and activate your community. You know, we would be, you know, just go to the motherearthproject.org.
A lot of times some really cool collaborations happen between our nonprofit partners and the filmmakers. Sometimes filmmakers pair up and decide they want to do a project together. And that's one of the coolest things that I've gotten to see being festival director. So I encourage all of our audience to reach out to all of you that are on this Zoom interview today, to connect and to keep the conversation going and to be the change. And I want to thank all of you so much for your hard work. I know how hard it is to do all of these things that you're doing so very well. So thank you for your time and for sharing your passion and work with our audience.
Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed the first 2 nights of our Flicks4Change online program, but I got to tell you, I am super excited for night 3 for a number of reasons, but the one thing that excites me the most is this power of community. So if you attended our events in 2019, either in Los Angeles or in Washington, D.C., you saw Joe Coleman tear it up on stage. He was in the center of his 3-man band, Leonard Coleman and Blunt. You also saw Grammy winner Sam Martin sing live to his, I guess you can call it a music video, but really it is this incredible amalgamation of an entire album of music put into a video. Well, the 2 of them got to meet, and not only do we have their artistic collaboration to share with you on night 3, we have the story of how it all came to pass. And I got to tell you, it is one of the best things that I've ever seen, no joke. And if you disagree with me, I want you to comment and tell me so, because I was blown away. Beyond that, we also have the topics of addiction and mental health. We have sexual assault and sexual harassment. These are topics and issues that are still pervasive in our society and are very important to discuss. So night 3 is going to be excellent, and the panels that follow
are going to be illuminating and entertaining, and we really hope that you see us there and then, and continue to comment and vote and think about your audience favorites. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.